Hey, deep divers, welcome back. Today we're going to tackle something a lot of you have been asking about,
Yeah.
the cost of the American dream. You guys have sent in some fascinating data from Investopedia, and I gotta say, getting a grip on this topic
hmm
feels super relevant right now.
It's definitely timely, yeah. What I think is so fascinating about this Investopedia analysis is that they actually put a price tag on the American dream. They've gone beyond just talking about it in a vague sense.
Yeah, right.
They've really tried to quantify it.
Don't keep us in suspense. What's the damage?
They estimate the cost of achieving the American dream. And we're talking homeownership, raising a family, retirement savings, like the whole 9 yards,
Yeah.
at a whopping $4.4 million.
$4.4 million.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Honestly, hearing that number makes my head spin a little. It's way more than what most people earn in their lifetime.
Right. Absolutely, you're right. The average person with a bachelor's degree will earn around $2.8 million over their entire career. So right off the bat, we're seeing this disconnect between the dream and what most individuals can realistically earn.
So does that mean the American dream is basically a team sport? Like you need a dual income situation to even come close?
It really does seem that way, yeah. The report actually points out that a dual income household, where both people have bachelor's degrees, could potentially earn $5.6 million over their working years, which gets you closer to that $4.4 million mark. But it still leaves very little wiggle room.
Okay, so before we spiral into an existential crisis about millions of dollars, let's unpack where this 4.4 million even comes from. Like, what are the big ticket items on this
Yeah.
American dream shopping list?
Sure. So they break it down into these key milestones that I think a lot of people associate with the American dream. Let's start with retirement. They estimate you'll need a cool $1.6 million saved up to enjoy those golden years.
1.6 million just for retirement. I'm already stressed. Is that even realistic for most people?
It's definitely a hefty goal. And the report acknowledges that the reality is far less rosy. Over half of American families don't even have retirement accounts. And even among those who do, the average balance for folks in their late 50s and early 60s is nowhere near that 1.6 million target. It's closer to like 185,000.
Oh, wow. So already we're seeing this huge gap between the dream and the reality. What about those other milestones? Like everyone dreams of a beautiful wedding, right? Is that factored into this 4.4 million figure?
Absolutely, yeah. Weddings are definitely on the list. The average wedding these days will set you back over 44,000.
Wow.
And that's just the average. If you're picturing a lavish affair,
Right.
that number can skyrocket.
Right. Plus having pandemic and inflation been hitting the wedding industry pretty hard.
Oh, they definitely have. Everything from flowers to catering has gotten more expensive, so even a simple wedding can still make a serious dent in your savings.
Yeah.
It's definitely something to consider when planning those big life events.
Okay, so maybe we'll elope. But what about the costs that come with starting a family? Raising kids is expensive, aren't you?
Oh, definitely. The report estimates that raising 2 children to the age of 17 will cost you upwards of $600,000. And if you factor in college expenses, that number jumps to over $800,000.
Whoa. It's no wonder we're seeing more and more people delaying or choosing not to have children because of the financial burden. That 800,000 figure is more than what many people earn in their entire lifetime.
It's a significant factor, for sure. The report really highlights how affordability is a major concern for many people these days when it comes to family planning.
Okay, let's move on to another cornerstone of the American dream, homeownership. That's got to be a huge chunk of that 4.4 million, right?
It is. It certainly is. They put the cost of buying and financing a home with a 30-year mortgage at almost $1 million, $929,955 to be exact. And remember, that includes homeowners insurance and property taxes. But it doesn't account for things like maintenance or those pesky HOA fees.
Right, those hidden costs that can really sneak up on you.
Exactly.
Like, oh no.
And on top of that, we've seen home insurance rates climbing pretty steadily in recent years. So even if you manage to secure that mortgage, the ongoing costs of homeownership can be a significant burden.
Okay, so far this American dream is looking less like a dream and more like a financial nightmare. What else is included in this grand total?
Well, brace yourself, because they've factored in the cost of always owning new cars. Not one, but 2 of them.
Always having new cars.
Yeah.
Is that even realistic for most people?
You're right. Most people don't buy new cars every few years. It's more of an aspirational element, a way to capture that classic image of the American dream, where you're always driving a shiny new vehicle.
Right. Okay, I get the symbolism, but come on. How much does that fantasy actually cost?
Get ready for this. Over $800,000.
Seriously. It's amazing how quickly those car payments can add up over a lifetime. All right, well, I think we can safely scratch that one off our Personal American Dream list? What else is on the menu?
Well, they also include a yearly vacation in their calculations.
Okay, now that's something I can get behind.
Yeah.
Everyone needs a break, right? How much did they budget for that?
They estimate that the lifetime cost of taking a week-long vacation every year comes out to almost $180,000.
That actually doesn't sound too outrageous, considering it's spread out over your whole life. And who doesn't love a good vacation?
It's definitely an important part of a well-rounded life, and keep in mind that $180,000 is just for the vacation itself. It doesn't include things like flights, meals, or activities.
Right.
Yeah.
Those extras can definitely add up.
Yeah.
But still, a week-long getaway every year sounds pretty good to me.
Absolutely. And the good news is that most Americans do manage to take at least one trip a year, even if it's not always a full week.
So we've covered retirement, weddings, kids, a house, those fancy cars,
Yeah.
and vacations. What else could they possibly include in this American Dream package?
Believe it or not, they even factor in the cost of having pets.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
But also it makes sense. Pets are part of the family, and they do come with costs, especially those vet bills.
Exactly. They estimate the lifetime cost of owning a dog and a cat at around $36,000. Of course, that can vary depending on the breed and, individual needs of your furry friends.
Right. All right, so we're getting pretty close to that grand total. What's the last item on the list?
One final expense, and it's one we all have to face eventually: funerals.
Oh, wow. They really thought of everything. But it is true. Planning for end-of-life expenses is part of responsible financial planning. Nobody wants to leave their loved ones with a huge financial burden.
Absolutely. And it's not a massive expense in the grand scheme of things, about $8,800 on average.
Okay, so let's add it all up. We've got retirement savings, a wedding, 2 kids, a house, 2 brand new cars that we're probably not going to buy, yearly vacations, a dog and a cat, and a funeral.
And all of that brings us to that eye-popping total of $4.4 million for the American dream. It's quite a price tag, isn't it?
It is. You know, what really strikes me is that this whole breakdown highlights just how expensive the American dream, as it's traditionally defined, really is. It feels like it's out of reach for most individuals.
Yeah, that's a really important point. And the report doesn't shy away from that reality. They acknowledge that this 4.4 million figure doesn't even include basic necessities like food, healthcare, or everyday transportation costs, since we're not all driving those fancy new cars.
Right, right. So what does this all mean for the average person? Is the American dream just a fantasy? Or is there a way to make it more attainable?
Well, giving up on the dream doesn't really feel like the American way, does it?
Definitely not. But I got to be honest, that 4.4 million feels like a mountain. I'm not sure I can climb. Is there any way to make your money work harder for you, to close that gap?
That's the question, isn't it? And the answer might lie in exploring some innovative financial tools that can potentially help bridge that gap between what we earn and what we aspire to achieve.
Ooh, intriguing. What kind of tools are we talking about? Give us an example.
Well, you've probably heard of Pulse Zen, right?
Of course.
Yes.
That's the Web 3.0 token with that unique pay-it-forward system.
Yeah.
But I'll admit, I don't fully understand how it works.
So basically, with Pulse Zen, 2% of every transaction is redistributed to all token holders. So even if you're not actively trading, you're earning passive income just by holding the token. And the magic really happens with compounding interest.
Okay, stop right there. Compounded interest. I'm all ears.
Imagine this. You consistently invest $1,700 per month in a system yielding 18% compounded interest. In 20 years, you could potentially reach $4 million.
Wait, $4 million from $1,700 a month? That sounds almost too good to be true.
No, it's crucial to remember that this is purely hypothetical. We're not talking about guaranteed returns or anything like that.
Right. Crypto investments are known for being volatile. There are no guarantees, especially in that world.
Exactly. This calculation doesn't factor in potential price fluctuations in the crypto market, but it does illustrate the potential power of compounding interest. Even small, consistent investments can potentially grow into something substantial over time.
Okay, so it's not a magic solution, but it's definitely a possibility worth exploring, especially with the cost of living rising faster than most people's incomes.
Absolutely. And that's what we're all about here at The Deep Dive. Exploring possibilities, challenging assumptions, and encouraging you to think critically about your own financial journey.
Yeah, I love that.
We'll dive deeper into this in our next segment, but for now, let's take a quick break.
All right, sounds good.
Welcome back. So before we went to break, we were talking about this hefty $4.4 million price tag on the American dream. And honestly, it's a lot to digest. But I think what's even more crucial to consider is that even if you and your partner are both earning good money, that figure still feels pretty daunting for a lot of people.
Right. And it feels like there's this underlying tension between that dream and the reality for a lot of folks. What are some of the factors that contribute to that achievability gap you mentioned earlier? Why is this dream feeling so out of reach for so many people?
Well, one thing that the Investopedia report makes very clear is the significant impact of structural inequalities. We're talking about things like the racial wealth gap and the gender wage gap. These systemic issues mean that certain groups are starting off at a disadvantage right from the
So
get-go.
it's not just about individual effort. It's about acknowledging that the playing field itself isn't level.
Exactly. For example, historical and ongoing discrimination has resulted in a significant disparity in wealth accumulation between different racial groups. This means that even if people have the same income level, certain families face much steeper hurdles when it comes to building savings, investing, and passing on wealth to future generations.
And we can't forget about the gender wage gap, which means that women on average are still earning less than men for doing the same work. So
Wow.
even in a dual income household, that gap in earning potential can make a big difference when you're trying to reach those major financial milestones.
Absolutely. And what's even more concerning is that these initial disparities often compound over time. It's like trying to catch up in a race where someone else got a head start.
It's like a domino effect, right? Those
Ugh.
early disadvantages can have ripple effects
Yeah,
throughout a person's life.
precisely. And then, of course, we can't ignore the elephant in the room, the constantly rising cost of living, housing prices, healthcare expenses, education costs. It seems like everything just keeps going up. And it's making it harder for everyone, regardless of their background, to keep pace.
It really does feel like you're running on that treadmill. But the speed keeps increasing, and the finish line never seems to get any closer.
That's a perfect way to describe it. And it's this combination of structural inequalities and the relentless rise in costs that's making the American dream feel increasingly unattainable for so many people. It's not just about individual effort or ambition. It's about navigating a system that often feels stacked against them.
Okay, so we've laid out the challenges, but now I want to talk about potential solutions. We touched on Pulse Zen earlier, and I'm really curious to hear more about how this crypto token could actually help to bridge that achievability gap we've been discussing.
Well, remember when we talked about the power of compounding interest?
Yeah.
Pulse Zen has this really unique feature called Pay It Forward, or PIF, in simple terms. 2% of every transaction made using Pulse Zen is redistributed to all token holders.
So even if I'm not actively buying or selling the token, I'm still earning passive income just by holding on to it. That sounds pretty interesting.
Exactly. And because the rewards are compounded, those earnings have the potential to grow exponentially over time. It's like a snowball effect, where your initial investment keeps building upon itself.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this could be a tangible way to build wealth, especially for people who might feel like they're struggling to get ahead. Using traditional methods.
Exactly. And what's really intriguing about Pulse Zen is that it doesn't require staking or lockups. You have complete control over your tokens. You can buy, sell, or hold as you see fit.
So it's like a more accessible way to participate in the world of DeFi and potentially benefit from those high yields that we often hear about.
You got it. Now, of course, we have to acknowledge that crypto investments come with inherent risks. There are no guarantees in any investment. And the crypto market is known for its volatility.
Right, we have to say that.
We do. But despite the risks, Pulse Zen's approach to wealth redistribution through this PIF system presents a very intriguing possibility, especially for folks who are feeling priced out of the traditional American dream.
It's like a new tool in the toolbox, one that might be particularly relevant in this current economic climate where traditional savings accounts and investment strategies aren't necessarily keeping pace with the rising cost of living.
That's a great way to put it. It's about having options and exploring different approaches to building a more secure financial future.
And ultimately, the true value of this deep dive isn't about memorizing specific numbers or blindly endorsing any particular investment strategy. It's about helping you, our listener, to understand the bigger picture, to see the systemic challenges that are at play, and to become aware of innovative solutions that are emerging.
You nailed it. It's about empowering yourself with knowledge, understanding the forces that shape our financial landscape, and then making informed decisions that align with your own personal goals and values.
Okay, deep divers, we've covered a lot of ground in this second part of our exploration. We've talked about the achievability gap, discussed how structural inequalities and rising costs create barriers for so many, and we've even started to imagine how innovative tools like Pulse Then could potentially help people build wealth in new and exciting ways.
But our deep dive isn't over yet. In our final segment, we'll bring it all together, connect the dots, and leave you with some thought-provoking questions to consider as you navigate your own unique path toward financial well-being. Stay tuned.
Welcome back, Deep Divers. We've been on quite the journey, haven't we?
We have. From that eye-popping $4.4 million figure to, really diving into the systemic issues that make achieving the American dream so much harder for some.
Yeah, it's been a lot to unpack. But now, in this final segment, it's time to bring it all home, connect the dots, and, most importantly, bring it back to you, our listener.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, knowledge is only valuable if you can actually use it right.
Exactly. So after this deep dive, what stands out to you?
Yeah, like what were those aha moments for you? Did anything make you reconsider your own definition of the American dream? Or what it means to achieve it?
Maybe it was grasping the sheer scale of that cost, like realizing that even a good income doesn't guarantee you'll hit all those milestones.
Right. Or perhaps it was that moment of realizing that the playing field isn't level for everyone, understanding how those structural barriers we talked about make the dream that much harder for some.
Yeah, for sure. Or maybe it was that spark of possibility that came with exploring tools like Pulse Zen and seeing how innovative approaches could open up new pathways to wealth creation.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
We want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, your takeaways, even your own personal definition of the American dream. Let's continue this conversation on social media.
Yeah, let's challenge each other to think critically about what it means to achieve financial well-being in today's world, because there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
And remember, deep divers, the real value of this deep dive isn't about memorizing the numbers. It's about understanding the bigger picture, using that knowledge to make informed decisions for your own unique journey.
It's about defining your own version of the dream, pursuing it with open eyes, knowing both the challenges and the opportunities that lie ahead.
So as we wrap up this episode, we want to leave you with one final thought-provoking question.
Okay, hit me.
If the traditional American dream, the one with the house, the white picket fence, the 2 cars, the yearly vacations, is becoming increasingly unattainable for so many, what does that mean for the future of our society?
That's a big one.
It is. Are we heading toward a greater divide between those who can afford that dream and those who can't? Or can we, as a society, redefine the dream altogether, make it more inclusive, more attainable, more reflective of the values we truly hold dear?
Those are questions we all need to grapple with. The answers aren't simple, but they lie within each of us and in the choices we make, both individually and collectively.
So keep diving deep, keep questioning, keep exploring, and never stop dreaming.
Couldn't said it better myself.
And that, my friends, is a wrap on this episode of The Deep Dive.
Thanks for joining us on this journey, and we'll catch you next time.